Hey, hey, everybody! Welcome back to yet another recap of Swarm. We're diving into episode 5 this week. A lot of us are back. Good to be back. Of course, as always, we've got our great hosts, Ryan, Angelica, that always hold it down. We've got Sam here, and I'm back from a week of lots of fun and traveling. And I'm really glad to be able to dive in with this. I'm really glad to dive into this week's episode of Swarm because this was a really good one, and I think that you guys are just as excited as we are. I see some folks that are popping into the comments, so thanks for being here. Indiga, I've been binging Swarm for a month, discovering more clues. And you just discovered our channel last week. Thank you for finding us. Thank you for being here. By the way, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our channel. Flix Girl is the handle. And also, you can find us on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Black Girl Nerds. We're currently live streaming on Twitch as well as YouTube and Facebook, so you can follow us on all of the socials. We're also on Twitter. But if you do want to engage with us on this discussion, then please join us on YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook, because Twitter doesn't allow you for that function. And by the way, so that people like, who's it? Indiga? So that Indiga, for folks like Indiga to find us, make sure to hit the like button when you're on YouTube. We got Josh. Gang's all here.
Gang.
Gang is all here. So make sure you hit the like button on YouTube. Of course, subscribe so you can get the notifications. But that helps us so that folks like Indiga can find us. And hi to Tin Hazel, who is here. So thanks so much, guys, for joining us in the chat. And we can't wait to dive right into Swarm. So without further ado, I'm going to toss it over to you, Angelica, to get started.
All right. Well, this episode was entitled Girl Bye, which is, very common Beyonce reference, girl bye, boy bye. And it ties very well into this episode. I'd also like to say, fun fact, Malia Obama, the Malia Obama, daughter of Barack Obama, was actually wrote the teleplay for this episode. So,
this is hers.
Yeah, this is her episode.
Wow.
Nice.
That's
Doing
amazing.
big things. So really, really excited.
What an episode to be a part of.
Right.
I know.
Right. Seriously.
Yeah, she credited herself as Malia Ann. I'm like, girl, we know who you are. we found out. So yeah, it was a great episode. So I'm just gonna start with a round table of your thoughts. So I'll start off with Jamie. Initial thoughts on this first episode.
Well, number one, kudos to Malia for holding it down on the writing on this one, because the writing was excellent. This episode was absolutely fantastic. We really dive into the psyche of Dre on this episode, and we get a lot of context behind Marissa's parents and what they're like. So we get some background on her family. So this was some people would probably argue that this is maybe a filler episode. I would disagree. I think we get a lot of background that sort of lays down the foundation of what we're going to see in the episodes to come.
Agreed. Ryan?
Yeah, shout out to Malia. I love, some of my favorite lines are in this episode, and I'm just glad it was less bodies. So I was here for it. I was like, all right, let's go.
No bodies.
With less bodies. All right.
All right. Samuel.
Oh man, I really enjoyed this episode. I think I watched this episode again and again and again because there was so much dialogue that was pivotal to Dre's backstory that I've been wanting for the beginning of the first episode. And I was kind of like, even though there were no bodies, I felt impending danger throughout the house at all times. I don't know what it was. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about this one. And from a dialogue standpoint and from a layered standpoint, we get so much more from Marissa's family as much as Dre's. And I think that's very fascinating. And it also leads into some context from the fourth episode back into this one, which I'll I want to talk about, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
All right, agreed. Josh?
No, yeah, I did not catch the Malia Ann thing. But definitely like shout out to Malia. Like this is like everyone don't get to come in at like the top, but she definitely came in like, you know, she set her own bar. This was magnificent. And yeah, same Ryan. A lot of my favorite lines were even like I know we'll get into it, but like when she says that she thinks death is beautiful because death is fair. I'm like, oh, you're getting us with that good poetry on today. Come on. So I was hyped. And then so like if the last episode was a reminder why I don't trust white people, this episode was a reminder of like why I trust black people. You ain't just gonna walk in my house all types of crazy and think you ain't about to catch something.
That part.
So, that part, yeah.
Yeah, this is wonderful.
Okay, well, thank you for that colorful commentary, Josh. It's facts. Yeah, so let's get into it. So we open, it's now May 2018, so a couple months after the incident at Eva's retreat. We're back in Houston, Texas. We open with Kenny, who's played by one of my favorite social media personalities, Ricky Thompson. He's a customer service employee at a mobile carrier store. It's like an AT&T, and he's watching a clip of an artist getting interviewed on an Ellen-esque show. The host of the show is called Helen, so they're making it very obvious. Even the set is the same. And the host asked the artist, and I think it might be like Little Gimbal because he'd mentioned he was in Toronto. They asked him about the whole Nyjah biting incident at Cachet's after party. He says he wasn't there, but he got plenty of text about it. And then Kenny ends up turning off the program because he gets a visit from a customer who happens to be Dre. She's looking for assistance. Her phone is damaged, and I'm assuming it got cracked because of the whole chaos at Eva's retreat. But Dre tells Kenny she just wants the phone fixed because it stopped working. She poses as Marissa to get the phone turned back on. She doesn't have ID. She doesn't have the passcode to the account, but Kenny is a friendly guy. You know, he's willing to help her out. He can tell that she's in a pickle. So he looks up the account information and he tells Dre the phone was deactivated by Harris Jackson, which we later learn is the father of Marissa, and that the phone number will be reassigned in 10 days. So we already know how attached Dre feels to this phone. This can't happen. So Dre is insisting that the phone belongs to her. She needs the phone to work. Kenny sympathizes. He gets it. It's family drama, but ultimately she needs to talk to Harris. And she's like, you don't understand. This phone has very important things. I need it to be turned back on. She even tries to bribe him. So he offers to call Harris, and he goes to pick up his phone to call Harris, and she slaps his hand. She's like, don't call Harris. And he's like, you know what? This is feeling a little bit sketchy. And he tells Dre, like, I can't help you, and you're going to have to leave. So in that moment, I thought for a second that Kenny was going to be another victim, but he survives. So I'll start with your thoughts. I'll go to Jamie first.
Is his name Kenny or Ricky?
Kenny is the name of the employee. Ricky is the name of the actor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Kenny is absolutely hilarious. I absolutely adored this character. Great opening to this episode. We start off with a little bit of humor, and it kind of meanders into some dark humor as well. Mm-hmm. And it was so funny because that line where he's like, yeah, this is getting sketchy when she insists on getting the phone turned on, and then he's like, this is getting a little intense. That was just so funny, and I just absolutely loved it. I was concerned for his life at one point because Dre had that look in her eye where she kind of looked up, and I was just like, ooh. I think he's got a short shelf life. I'm concerned, but thank goodness he was spared. But yeah, it was, again, it's such a great testament to Dominique's acting and her performance that even in a scene like this that just seems like it's so, I don't know, just a normal, regular kind of scene where you go into a cell phone store and you ask your cell phone to get turned on. like you still have anxiety, you're still fearful, you're still scared. You don't know what is going to happen with this character. You don't know if she's going to have some kind of crazy breakdown in the store and be a threat to this man's life. And yeah, it was just absolutely amazing. And I love that scene. It's actually one of my favorite scenes in the whole episode.
Yeah, Ricky Thompson did that. Over to you, Ryan.
Yeah, shout out to Ricky Thompson. I was laughing so hard. I forgot he could get stabbed or like his head bashed in or something. I was so like, I forgot that was like a serious threat because I was so busy laughing. Because to me, he was the character that reflected the audience finally. Because everybody draws into her craziness. And we like, y'all know she crazy, right? Like you see her twitching and pointing and stuff. Like, why y'all talking to this girl? And he was finally like, yo, you ain't got enough money for me. You need to leave out my store. So I'm gonna see you later. So yeah, I appreciated Kenny in this. So yeah, that was a very good scene. Very good scene.
Yeah, agreed. Samuel?
Yeah, man, he did a great job with that. The thing was, I was scared for Kenny's life because I was like, anybody that's worked customer service, like you can tell when a client is starting to go a little too far to the right. And I was like, all the signs are there, man. It's red flags all over the place. If it was me, I would have slowly been like, give me 1 second, walking to the back, going to the supervisor, being like, I think this girl's about to lose it, you know, something like that. And I was like, bro, there's no one else around. It's just you and her. I was so scared for him. But the one thing that I found fascinating about that is the moment that he offered, you know, to talk to Harris, and she kind of pushed his hand away, and I was like, that's weird. Why would she not let him do that? I mean, he could do the work for her. It was almost like she was scared. And I thought that was very fascinating. That was a good little nugget to lead into what's going to come up next.
Yep. Josh?
Yeah, no, definitely agree with that last part, Sam. I was wondering that too. I was like, like obviously like she's doing like sneaky stuff. But yeah, definitely set up for what was to come, which I appreciate. Just again, from a storytelling standpoint, you don't have to give everything up front. You can put stuff in and be like, oh, okay. Thank you, Malia. Yeah, I also thought, when he said I can make the call, I thought he was going to call like a manager or something.
Or security.
Manager out here.
Right.
Like, dude, if you do that, she's going to bash your head in with that's what's coming. So yeah, I was definitely scared on his behalf, but it was interesting seeing, I think, particularly on the heels of the vulnerability that she unpacked in the last episode,
right?
Seeing that she wasn't, and we see it later, like it comes full circle. So she's not all the way on her instant kill mode. It's like she got pushed a few steps back because she's all like consumed in her feelings right now. And even though, you know, like Ryan said, she's twitchy, she was all in her feelings and like vulnerable and like scared, very much scared, angry, not scared, aggressive right in that moment. I was like, what an interesting like character development step. And also scared because, you know, like any Black person who's done anything in the era of social media, she was like, at any moment, people could connect. That was me who bit Nigel. Like people can remember that, and then my face would be all over everywhere. And please just turn my phone back on so I can get my stolen car and go. That was a great scene.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. Ricky Thompson is one of my favorite influencers, and I think was it Tanae that said he started out on Vine, so he makes really funny content. If you want to, I think he has a podcast too. If you want to check out his page. And Jamie, I don't know if you have it queued up, but I actually use him. He's so expressive that I use him a lot as a meme. So there's not that one. That's the next episode.
Okay. Did you email it to me?
Yes, I did, but it's okay. But basically, it's Ricky going like this, and it's like, guess who's going to die if you don't agree that Nyjah is the best artist, and it's Ricky going like you. So I thought it was hilarious. So I really enjoyed that cameo. So Dre leaves the store. She sees a poster of Nyjah and Nekashe's The Running Scared 2 tour, which is essentially Beyonce and Jay-Z's On the Run 2 tour. And she's spotted by Erica. If you remember Erica, she was their manager from the first episode. So she hasn't seen Dre since 2016. So it's been about 2 years. In the food court, there's clips of the Helen show playing with Helen pressing her guests for details on the biter, Nija's biter, I should say, and he pleads the fifth. And Dre is watching this coverage anxiously. Like, she's already seen on social media and Twitter how people are freaking out about the fact that someone bit Nija. Now that it's made it to a major national talk show, like, sis is a little nervous. But thankfully, the artist says he doesn't know who bit Nija, so she's in the clear for now. Erica, joins her at the table with all of Dre's favorite food. We know that Dre is an emotional eater, and I feel like Erica remembers that. So she's like, I got you all your favorite condiments. Here you go. Let's catch up. So she asked Dre, like, where she's been, and Dre is pretty vague. She's been a little bit of everywhere. And Erica's like, yeah, I wish I could travel too. And, you look so nice. You look so, fancy and dressed up. I don't really think she looked that great, but I guess in comparison to how she used to look, it's an upgrade. And Dre's like, yeah, you too. And she's like, it's okay. You could tell me I'm chubby. Apparently, Erica just had a baby with Khalid's older brother, Talib, who she met at Marissa's funeral. And then she starts complaining about her breast. She's been breastfeeding. She makes a little adjustment, and Dre sees there's a tattoo of Marissa's face on Erica's chest. And Erica said that she decided to get the tattoo in honor of Marissa because apparently Marissa loved her girls. So it sounds like Erica already had other children, and Marissa was always very kind to them. And then she goes on to say she was wilding when Marissa died, and she realized everyone handles grief differently. So, she presumes that's the reason why Dre took off. And then she asked once again what she'd been up to, and Dre's kind of tight-lipped, and Erica's like, okay, I don't want to push it. You don't have to tell me anything. So then there's kind of a switch in Dre's facial expression, and the camera starts to slowly kind of pan into her face as she feeds Erica this lie about making a promise to Marissa that she would leave Houston and that she would start doing makeup based off the skills Marissa taught her. She claims she got a contact from Drama Queen. If you remember, that was the artist that Marissa was booked with. And she told Drama Queen Marissa's story, and Drama Queen felt bad, so she hired Dre as her assistant. And, they were in Atlanta touring. She did makeup for Drama Queen's friends, and the friend invited her to Nija to a party, and at the party she met Nija's mother, and it just goes on and on. They apparently connected, and once again she tells Nija's mother Angie about Marissa's story. Apparently Angie's so moved she gives her Nija's phone number. She calls Nija invites Dre to brunch. They have a great time. They drink mimosas, they hug, they're best of friends. And now she's hired as Angie's makeup artist. And, tears start rolling down her face. I don't know if Erica buys it. She seems pretty moved by the story. But she says, like, I always knew you would be something. I said, she's so weird, but she's going to be something. And Marissa would be so proud of you. And I love this bit. Dre says, I know. And then she takes her drink and like puts the straw in Erica's mouth, and Erica just like sips it. And I'm just like, okay. So I'll stop there for your thoughts. And I'll go counterclockwise this time. So Josh, I'll start with you.
Yeah, that was a very intense scene. Again, shout out Dominique. Just her acting is just outstanding. I hope she wins an award for this show. I think that I'll focus on like the turn when she kind of like switched it up, because I feel like, again, she was in her emotions. She's not quite in the instinctive kill mode, and it seems like she's trying to recover herself. She's like, okay, I messed up already. Like, people ask questions when you act weird, so let me just lean all the way into my psychosis. And the lie that she just puts together, it was impressive and scary. And then like the buzzing sound was like in the background. I was like, yo, this is nuts. And then she starts crying like she's moved. I'm like, but you're lying. But then I feel like, again, this whole thing is an examination on the Stan persona, because a piece of them believes the delusion as true.
Yep.
And so I'm like, for you, like, you've pierced so deeply into this that you're speaking from the delusion that you believe in at this point, which is how you're selling it. And then and so what was her friend's name? Who was she talking to?
Erica.
Erica. I felt bad for Erica because at first I was like, okay, Erica doesn't believe it, but as like it kept going and getting more elaborate and like it's the fulfillment of a dream, and she's just like, wow, I always need to be something. I was like, oh, like you, at least how I read it was like she was just like, dang, like you became this person, you fulfilled your dreams, and I'm working in fast food and I'm having kids. And so I felt sad for her in that moment. I don't know if that was the intent, but that's where I took it. And then the straw thing, I have enjoyed how they have parsed out her sexual like awakening in like the tiniest steps, because even from the very first episode when she and Marissa would just be in bed like super close to each other, it was just like that's real
weird.
That's intimate close.
Yeah.
But they never pushed it. And even in the last episode, when like Homegirl came out and like they kissed on the lips, and she was like, the hell was that? But like every step, she's just like, oh, like I'm out here. And so the straw thing was very much like if she fully manifests, she's like, I'm a top. I just want you to know that.
Good eye, Josh. Good eye.
Wow.
I'm in
Nice.
control.
You read all the way in.
All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Samuel on that note.
Well, I guess I'll talk towards Erica because the first time we saw Erica, like she was a jerk. I mean, honestly, she seemed like she had an inferiority complex. Like she seemed like she was just perpetuating like she's so much better than everybody else around her. And I think that, you know, you grow up with people in high school and they kind of have this like, you know, status and facade of that they have to overcompensate for all these things. And then eventually they get kids and things change. They kind of get humbled a little bit later. And I think that was kind of the relationship that Dre and her had at this moment, because she was kind of like, you know, yeah, I've been talking bad about this girl. I've been saying she's weird, but at least she's traveling. I don't, you know, she overcame Marissa's, you know, death and she still kept moving. And so I think a part of Erica has, you know, changed, which is interesting. But at the same time, like she was still very blunt. Like I still thought you were really weird. And so when Dre started having this whole conversation, I think initially she was like, oh, okay, this is real cool. I think at some point she realized this ain't real, but it's so elaborate and so passionate and so driven. I think she realized like, okay, she is off. So I feel for her and I connect with her passion, but I don't think any of this is real. And I think that she was kind of like, you know what? I'm just going to absorb it. And when she leaned forward with the straw, I was kind of like, you better drink that straw. I don't know what she's going to do if you don't drink that straw, because like she's gone all the way in. And if she believes that you don't believe it, I don't know what the ramifications of that is, because at this point now she's justifying all of her actions off of a lie. Like even down to the phone, like the whole reason why she killed everybody in the last episode because of the phone. And with this one, it's like she needs to have some kind of connection back to Marissa to forgive her for what she did. And it's all gone full circle. But that whole delivery by Dominique, oh my gosh, like that is pure acting. And that's one of the things I loved about the last episode, that conversation she had with Ava. Like it was some line deliveries with that. I was like, yo, that's Emmy worthy. Like on all honesty, this was another example of that. It was just great acting.
Yeah, definitely. Ryan?
Yeah, I saw Jamie popped up Indigo's comment here. I thought when she said girl, she was talking about breasts too.
Oh, I did too.
When she
okay.
yeah. I was like,
that wasn't literal.
Yeah, well, that's why I was
very weird.
Right, it does make it very weird. And then Josh added on another layer because I wasn't even thinking that either. And I was like, oh shoot. I was like, well, this whole scene was just a whole other level of weird that was happening. But yeah, shout out to the hard times for Erica. And I feel like, see, now when she showed the tattoo, that's when I thought she was gonna get stabbed. I was like, oh no, she did not just get that tattoo. I was like, what is going on? But it was more like, to me, Dre was more like, okay, you're not gonna one up me when it comes to Marissa. So let me tell you what I've been doing. And I got nervous when it looked like everybody's touched on it, whether she was gonna buy it or not, whether Erica was actually gonna buy the story that she was doing. At one point, I seen her face where her eyes looked like, girl, you was straight up lying. Ain't no way, you know, your weird tail got all the way to see Naja. But then she flipped it. Cause like I said, I don't know if she was like, okay, I'm reading some weird energy from Dre. I never understood this girl before. Let me just not touch this. So maybe that's what it was. But towards the end of it, when the conversation finished, I believe that Erica thought she was telling the truth. Now she could be doing some good acting like Dominique, but I believe when she finished it, she had been pulled into like Dre's whole psychosis. So that scene was very interesting.
I agree with you, Ryan. I think that Erica believed it. I think there were times when she looked at Dre and thought, okay, this is a very vivid story. And maybe even in the back of her mind, she thinks Dre is kind of weird. But I think she also wants to believe a lot of what Dre has to say as well. So I do agree with that. I just want to speak to Dominique's performance because everybody's pretty much echoed these sentiments that Dominique Fishback gave an incredible performance. And I really hope that Amazon campaigns heavily for Dominique Fishback for Best Actress in a leading role. I don't know what the actual title is called for the Emmys, but that they really campaign for her because this was some of the best acting that I've seen in a really long time. I mean, down from the tear that was welling up in her eye, which was very interesting. The camera was sort of panned down where you didn't actually see the tear flow. It was already like flowing down towards her chin. But at the very beginning, you did sort of see like the corners of her eyes start to well up. And I'm like, ooh, is she going to cry in this moment? But yeah, just like the crying and, you know, and then there's a moment where she wipes away the tear and then she's smiling and, you know, because she wants to compose and present herself as giving this really, you know, obviously a complete lies and fabrication, but she's trying to really, I feel like she does believe what she's saying. But just all of that was just absolutely amazing. And I remember when I first saw Dominique Fishback in a film called Night Comes On at Sundance in 2018. And even back then, I was like, this girl, Hollywood better watch out because she is going to just stun audiences everywhere. And I wasn't wrong. Like, she is out here killing it right now. And again, I just hope that she gets some sort of recognition because this performance was absolutely stellar. And this is just a small piece of many of the other great, strong performances that she puts throughout the series. And if they do the nominations, let this little scene be the scene that they show when they do the presentation at the award ceremony.
Yeah, she's definitely killed it. No pun intended. So we move on. I think she believed Dre star. Okay, so we move on to Dre arriving at Marissa's parents' home, and that clued me in because when she goes to the front door, the mat says the Jacksons, so we know Harris Jackson, Marissa Jackson, they're home. And I was really thrown off by her audacity. Like, she doesn't ring the doorbell. She doesn't knock. She just tries to open the door. And then there's like a keypad. She tries to get in. She can't get in. So she ends up going towards the driveway, and there's like a boat there, and she gets an idea that she remembers apparently that the remote to the garage is hidden in the covered boat that's in the driveway. So she opens up the garage door, she grabs a ladder, she climbs into an empty room. And I'm just like, oh, so we're just gonna break up into this house. Okay. The house is empty, and Dre looks at pictures of Marissa with her family hanging in the hallway. And remember, she's always referred to Marissa as her sister. We didn't necessarily know what their exact relation was, but it's clear here in these pictures that Marissa is part of the family, but we see nothing with Dre. She's noticeably absent. So she begins to walk through the house, and she's approached by Otis, the family dog, who recognizes her and pets her lovingly. At first, I thought she was going to be a goner. Like, I thought that big old St. Bernard was going to tear her up. But apparently, he's very familiar with her. So her claims of being part of the family must be true. She knew about the remote and the boat. She's familiar with the dog. So who knows? So she goes into Harris's study and digs around. She finds the family portrait with a picture of her, Dre, folded and cropped out. So they folded it and put it in the frame to make it seem like it's just them and Marissa. The camera also hovers over an urn of Marissa's little brother. So it's Harris Jackson Jr. He died at 6 days old. So Dre also takes on one of Harris's cigar. She finds his gun hidden in the drawer, and then she makes herself at home like she's apt to do. She takes a shower. She helps herself to some waffles. She settles in into a bedroom for the evening. So I'll stop there because I feel like this scene is pretty poignant about like Dre's pattern, but now she's in a familiar place. She's not in the home of one of her victims. So I'll start with you, Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot of audacity for her to walk up to the home like that, but I also feel like because remember, she's a little delusional. she's not quite right in the head. She probably feels like she lives there. She feels like that this is, her second home. So why would she approach this house any other way other than to just walk up to it? So that's how I'm thinking that her thinking is in that moment. And yeah, I got a sense in earlier episodes, even though she did refer to Marissa as her sister, that they weren't actual kin. But this episode confirms that, obviously, and you'll talk about that more as we progress into the scene. But yeah, I always got a sense that it was more of just like, just kind of, you're my sister kind of thing. Like, but yeah, this scene was intense. I was scared for her with the dog at first. I was like, uh-oh, Cujo's about to come out, and it was a Saint Bernard.
Yeah.
I was like, uh-oh. But yeah, so she's been to the house before. She's, as far as how many times and how often she's been there, that is something we won't quite know. But also this house and just looking at how extravagant it is, and just obviously her parents come from some money. So this gives some background into Marissa's socioeconomic background and kind of where she comes from as far as her financial situation goes, which that plays into a lot of what goes on in their relationship. So yeah, we get a lot more clues about the history of Marissa and Dre in this scene.
Yeah, agreed. Ryan?
Yeah, I like the placement of how they did a lot of the props without actually saying it, like unfolding the picture, and you get the urn of the little boy. You're like, okay, this family has been through some trauma. Like, where does your mind is just racing? Like, where does Dre fit in, and who's going to come through the door first? She's not taken out by the dog. She survived that. So who's the next person that's going to come through the door? Because she's not worried, right? She has that sense, because that's part of her MO too. But it's that sense, right, that this is her family, or that's in her mind right now. But you're like, well, you had to do something, right? So when are we going to find out? And it's just that uneasiness, that nervousness for like whatever Dre might do, and then what's going on with this family.
Agreed. Samuel? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I think the thing that was very telling to me is not only like her intercepting the dog and the dog being receptive of her, but the fact is the whole entire night and day, she kept the lights off the whole entire time. And whereas we've seen her go into people's houses in broad daylight and kill them and just have an extravaganza, not caring or anything. And I was like, why is this so different? And I was like, I keep going back to fear. Like there's some kind of fear. I mean, I think part of her is connected with this family, connected with this house, especially in this scene. But there's still something that's underlying that she would still try to keep all lights off. She doesn't want to get found out, but at the same time, she's trying to get what she needs. And it's I don't know, it's chilling, because when I saw the little wreath for the little boy, and it said, Harris Jackson Jr., and it said 6 days old. And I was kind of like, my mind started to race with the last episode. And I guess we'll talk about more later, but the last episode when Ava kind of brought out the conversation that she had with the grandmother about the milk, and the milk ended up being red. And she asked, did you do something? Did you hurt somebody? And she said, yes. And I was kind of like, is this what she did? Because I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like it's left up to interpretation, but I can believe it with the levels of trauma with this. I was like, if they're this, rich, like, why would Marissa be just, risking it all out here in the streets? Why would she have cut herself? So there's definitely a lot of disjointed family dynamics that I thought was so well done with the clues that they laid out just in this scene alone.
Yep, I agree. Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think everyone hit all the important parts on the nose. Yeah, she's moving in fear, and I'm assuming it's gonna come to the next part, like how she gets over that fear. But it's been so long since we've seen her be actually like unsure. Even if she's been like crazy and delusional this whole time, she's been very sure, like, yeah, I'm gonna flirt with you, I'm gonna take your pass, I'm gonna lock you in the freezer. Like, she's been very straight minded. And now she's just kind of like again, like keeping the lights off, taking a shower, like luxury, like what pampering, self-care, like it's like she's grasping for something that she's grasping for something that the absence of is what she's fashioned her identity around. And so she's kind of in this paradox constantly. And then on the other hand, I also felt like this was very biblical in the like Old Testament, like Amnon and Tamar type things. I don't know how many people are well versed in the Bible. Amnon and Tamar were technically siblings. Same thing with like Abraham and Sarah. Like there was a lot of like technically siblings, but we're not like actually siblings. So it's okay if like, we're together biblically. And so
Josh is a mess.
And so, but no, like I'm getting that because like it's not, obviously in the times that we're in, it's not something anyone wants to talk about, because if you bring it up, you sound weird. But what if you are her and you're adopted into this family, but you got a crush on the person that you're in close proximity with because they're not your actual family? Technically, there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, it's a weird conversation to have, but this whole thing is about her like delusional, and any sensitive emotions, she just kind of like pushes them down into this box and over projects them onto Nyjah. And so I was like, they're really kind of unpacking this in a particular way, because we know she has an over affection for Marissa. We know that. And we know it's more, she always, like I said, she always introduces as sister, but we know that she don't really act like that was just her sister. So I'm like, I found it anyways, like a really interesting way to kind of be like, hey guys, what about this weird thing that probably has happened somewhere to somebody without making it like a big deal? Little splash of Game of Thrones in there.
I was about to say, this isn't that weird of a conversation for us because we talk about Game of Thrones recaps.
Here we go.
And House of the Dragon, so very Targaryen. Yes.
Yes, there it is. Very, very Targaryen.
Yeah, we're pretty
but not as Targaryen, because it's not like literal.
Yeah.
Correct. This is
little
correct.
relatives, yeah.
Yeah, we're desensitized to incest, unfortunately. So, anything goes. We've been doing this for a couple years now, so yeah, we're desensitized.
This is why Jake's retired. He's like, I can't stand y'all.
Well, so anyway, Marissa's parents come home for the evening. So we see Harris, who's actually Leon, and Patricia, who's played by Kimberly Ann Parker. And I did want to make a note. So we know Leon's pretty famous for being in The Temptations and playing David Ruffin, right?
Yes.
But I love that the dog's name is Otis.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody came to see you, Otis. So I thought that was a lovely Easter egg there, them naming their dog Otis. So yeah, they return home from the evening. Harris knows that Patricia left the light on upstairs, and Patricia seems confused by that oversight. Obviously, she didn't leave the light on. And then she ends up settling into the living room with a cup of tea and a slice of cherry pie. She watches CNN. We see Don Lemon. And Dre just casually walks in, sits down. And I was actually super surprised at Patricia's reaction, because here is, her, essentially the prodigal daughter coming back home with a gun in hand aimed at her. And Patricia don't even move, don't even blink, still drinks her tea. And she's like, Andrea, I see you've returned. And Dre's like, where is he? As in, where is Harris? And she says, he's upstairs. And she's like, did you come to finish the job? And Dre puts the phone on the table, on the coffee table, demanding the phone gets turned back on. And Patricia's like, I don't have anything to do with that. I don't deal with that. You're going to have to take that up with Harris. You need to sort that out with him. And you can't take anything from you can't take much away from us that you haven't already taken. So they pretty much, it's almost like a revenge, like Kill Bill type situation, where he's like, I knew you would come back. I've been waiting on you. So I thought that was interesting, her reaction to Dre. So Dre's pleading for Patricia to turn the phone back on, and then Harris walks in with a shotgun. And I was like, oh boy, it's about to get real. So Dre actually, in this moment, she was just pleading and begging 2 seconds ago, but she gets real ignorant and she was like, I will shoot her. And Patricia says, no, you will not. And Harris says, girl, this is Texas. I'll shoot your ass and have a beer over your dead body. Like, don't play with me. That was a great line. And he tells her to put the gun down. Dre puts it on the coffee table. He orders her to put her hands over her head and walk towards the kitchen. And Patricia, she with it. Soon as Harris starts walking towards the kitchen, she pick up the gun and she follows them there. So I'll stop there. I want to break down the rest of the scene, but I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on this particular part. So I'm going to once again go counterclockwise. Go over to you, Josh.
I don't know. To be the sister that's not like known for being out in these streets, Malia got a lot of gangster in how she writes. I was like, that whole thing, like, this is Texas. I will kill you and have a beer over your dead. I was like, whoa. Also, first, shout out Texas for your overabundance of gun laws. But it's like, man, what a completely hood thing to say. And the wife didn't flinch. Like, the wife never stopped watching the news. That was the part that was crazy. She was like, husband's over here saying gangster stuff that would make Tupac blush. She's like, he probably will. And just drinking tea. I was like, what is this family? Yeah, that whole thing was wild to me. Like, again, like, I was a little bit surprised too, the mom's reaction. She was just so, just like almost like blasé, just offhanded about it. And then I found it interesting. I was like, like they weren't there. And so this is the first time, because obviously no one's really close to the situation. Like in the hometown, everyone knows what happened, but like hearing them like blame her so heavily for it in that way, like it had me second guessing. I was like, wait a minute, what did she do? And I had to like go back and remind myself like what happened. But from their perspective, these parents who are far away, it's like, yeah, you did it. And then that also it made me think about her in a different light, because it's like, okay, if she grew up in this house, for the most part, kids are very sensitive to knowing when they're being tolerated and not truly loved. And it seems like that was a big part of how she grew up. Like it seemed like even just the dichotomy, right? The juxtaposition, that she felt like she got more love from the family dog than from the people who were her parents. And I'm just like, how does that shape a kid? Like we see, I mean, in the real world, we see like adults who grow up and they do like terrible, horrific things. And I think perhaps in the age of like the MCU overabundance on making you sympathize with the villain, we have forgotten like actual tragic backstories. And it's like, not that she gets a pass, but like, how does that shape a person? So definitely, it didn't make me feel for her. I was just like, and then them just like blaming her. And then also like real colors are shown, right? Because if you're like, yeah, my son died and my daughter was putting you through, and I'll shoot you right now. It's like, oh, you never really considered me to be a part of this family. So like what I picked up from the folding versus the tearing is that it was probably folded the moment they left. and they didn't want to tear it in case Marissa ever came home, because Marissa would be like, well, why'd you tear her out? So that then adds another layer of like, oh, you only loved me because you only tolerated me because Marissa actually cared about me. And like, that's just a whole other level of just like mind, just like messing with your mind. So yeah, I feel like a lot came out here. And then again, she still wasn't on her kill stuff. Cause like, she doesn't do threats. She's a whole godfather. She's like, I'm gonna ask you once for what I want, then blood. Like, that's really all that it is. So yeah.
I go over to you, Samuel.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with the next scene, but this scene specifically is just the mom, dude. Like, the mom was just chilling, and like Dre kind of rolled up on her with the gun in her face, and Dre doesn't make threats. She just asks what she wants, like he just said. Like, I was kind of like, and the mom was like, "Oh, hey, what up? Like, you here to finish your job?" And I was kind of like, my head went, "This is their family dynamic. Like, this is how the family is, regardless of how extreme or what Dre's done, they move in this dysfunction." And I was like, regardless of where Dre is mentally or emotionally, or, you know, like, she came from them. So not only do they know her, but she knows them. And the fact was that the mom, even when all that was happening, she's like, I'll shoot her. She's like, she won't. And I was like, she's not saying that because like she was trying to bluff. Like, she knows for a fact Dre doesn't have it in her to do it because she looks at her like her mom. And it's just crazy because I was like, the reason why Dre has been scared up until this point, and even the way she said it, she was like, she didn't ask initially, you know, I need you to do this. She was like, where is he? Because I was like, okay, like any person that, you know, is a son or a daughter, you know, you done messed up. You don't want to piss your dad off, right? And she was kind of like, yo, where he at? And she's like, he's upstairs. And just like, you know, you would any other situation, you want to get what you want. You talk to the mom first. So you do it the easy way. Like, hey, I need you to do this favor for me. Can you turn this phone on? While she's pointing the gun. Now, again, this is a family that's dysfunctional. So she's pointing the gun at her saying it. But for the mom, it's normal. And so she's like, that's not my business. Take this up with him. What she meant was take this up with your dad. Let him figure that out. And I was like, this is crazy. This is so crazy. Because by the time he rolled up in there with a shotgun, I was like, this whole family is messed up. Now, Dre may have been a part of it, you know, and maybe she was the wrinkle in this, but they are riddled with dysfunction on levels that I was like, how did she come out of this? I was like, you know, I don't know if you guys saw like the Harley Quinn show. There was an episode of Harley Quinn when she went back to her family, and you realize like how dysfunctional she was before she became a psychologist. Yeah. It reminded me of that. And I was like, okay, I don't know what's about to happen, but I'm thinking that this is not going to end well. So I can't wait to talk about the next scene more than anything. But yeah, that was some of my tidbits of this one.
All right, Ryan.
Yeah, Patricia is dangerous because she don't have nothing else to lose. So when she sat there, when she said, you come on with it, I was like, uh-oh. I was like, well, you got another, maybe I'm biased, but you got a black woman ain't got nothing to lose. And she mad. You took most. I was like, uh-oh. I was like, but the only thing though, I think that kept Patricia a little bit, because she could have went off on the Dre tip, but I think what keeps her a little bit down is it seems like Harris got more to control here, right? Because she's like, well, you go talk to him about the bills, and I don't really take care of that. You go to him. So you could kind of tell who's more controlling the house. But yeah, Patricia is like, she's not backing down from that Godfather moment, because what she got to lose? She's like, I'm about to sit here, keep sipping my drink. You can't take nothing else from me. You know, I lost all of my kids. So what else, you know, what else you got that you can take? So yeah, when Dre rolled up with the gun, the scariest person in this scene, shout out to Leon, because I have never been scared for anybody else in the scene with Dre until this moment. He acted his butt off because I was so scared for her. And it's like, girl, you got bodies following you, so why are we scared for her? But I was scared for her in this scene. I was like, he played this. He was pissed when he showed up behind her, and he was like, I want you to do that. And I was just like, oh my God, now we see what the problem is here. So yeah, they just escalated from there. So yeah, this is crazy.
Yeah, Jamie.
Yeah, shout out to Leon just being in this episode. That Easter egg moment, that was a good one for many of us of a certain age. We can appreciate that because Five Heartbeats, that was my movie back in the day. But yeah, you guys all touched on some really good points. I like Samuel's observation about this family moving in dysfunction that is on point. I also think that maybe, and you touched on this too, Angelica, about, this kind of sort of being like a revenge thing where they expected her to kind of come back. I think that maybe they already knew she was in the house. Because if you remember when that scene opens and she says Harrison says to Patricia that the light is on upstairs, I think that was the moment where they sort of suspected that they may have an intruder in their house. And that intruder that they probably suspect was Dre. So that's my observation, that maybe they already knew. But still, even knowing that she's already in the house and someone pointing a gun at you, I would still have a reaction of just like, get out. Really, I mean, the composure and just the calmness that Patricia had in that moment was beyond anything I could ever seen. But who knows? It could be just the adrenaline that's kicked in. As Ryan said, she's a Black woman with nothing to lose, so watch out. And she probably is like, again, she's probably expecting this. So it's less of there's less anxiety involved with Dre being a threat to her than for any of us or anybody in a normal situation where they'd be super fearful. So yeah, I absolutely love that scene. I love Leon's character in that scene. And I think it also opened, it turned the page on the relationship between Marissa and her parents, because I get a sense that there's probably some emotional abuse that's going on, especially between her and her father. And that her mom is probably not as present. Because she does seem like she may be emotionally disconnected. Obviously, the reaction towards a person pointing a gun at you and just not having a reaction, that maybe that's something that is a pattern for her. But yeah, I just, I get a sense that her parents weren't very loving and kind to her. And we see that reflected in this moment. So, yeah.
Yeah. And it opens up to the reasons why someone like Marissa would hurt themselves, right? Like, mom and dad aren't the nicest people in the world, and they probably were really strict and expected her to be up here, A's, probably were disappointed that she left home to be a makeup artist when they didn't raise her that way, and then they got Dre leeching off of her, so we could see why Marissa was a little stressed out. So to continue on this scripting scene, Harris asks why Dre is there. And Patricia says it has something to do with Marissa's phone. Harris doesn't really buy that. He was like, no, why are you really here? And Dre's like, it's because of the phone. And he's like, nah, I knew you would come back. You came back here because you were lonely. And then he turns to Patricia and tells her, I knew she would come back. I saw her at the funeral. I knew that would not be the last time I'd see her. And then he tells Dre, you know what? I should have killed you right there. And I was like, oh, this goes beyond her breaking in. He has it out for her. He blames Dre for Marissa's death. In his heart, he believed that if Marissa was home with her family where she was supposed to be and not out with Dre, she would still be alive. And Dre was like, you know what? Marissa was my family too, and you had no right to make me leave the funeral. So Harris, a gangster to the core, picks up, look like some cognac, some whiskey, something dark, some brown liquor, takes a sip. And, he's like, how long was Marissa lying to me about paying your rent? And Dre's like, we took care of each other. He's like, yeah, all right. And then he says, he has like this, almost like this villain soliloquy, this villain origin speech. He's like, I had a long time to think about why this happened. And I realized it was restitution. My mother was sick. We gave all the money to the doctors. Our son died. And then the business fell through. And then here you were, a check at the door. So, when you foster a child, you get money for the child. So Harris, he's like, you know what? Taking that money was the biggest mistake I've ever made. And he goes on to say, at your highest moment, that's when the devil comes for you. And I believe that's actually the same quote that Denzel said to Will Smith after the Oscar slap. So I kind of liked that turnaround. But then he adds this part to it. What they don't tell you is that at your lowest, he's already mother effing there. And he tells Patricia, go to the next room, woman. So, because he about to finish the job. And he orders Dre to turn around. And so Dre ends up, you know what? Dre thinks on her feet. She grabbed a rolling pin and she skedaddles on out of there. He starts to shoot at her. So she runs up the steps. She throws the rolling pin at him. And then she barricades herself into Marissa's room. So this scene was super intense. And Harris is like, get out of her room. Get out of her room. You don't belong there. And then we start to hear the buzzing sound as Dre approaches Marissa's vanity, which is almost like a shrine to Marissa. There's pictures of Marissa everywhere, pictures of Nyjah, concert tickets. We hear the buzzing sound. We hear the song that Nyjah sings. That's also her ringtone from Marissa. I live for it. And Dre just starts to kind of lose it. And that picture there, she starts to like clutch her chest and beat her stomach, try to center herself. And before she can even do anything, Harris shoots through the door. So he's like, I'm gonna kill you. So she don't got no ladder now. She jumps right out the window. And back to your point, Jamie, about them knowing she was home. Remember, I feel like the ladder was up there, but now it's gone. So she has no choice but to jump. And we heard that crack. She definitely broke something. And so she starts to limp away and he's still shooting. He's like, I'm gonna kill you. You killed my baby girl. Now I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill your ass. And Drake like ducks behind his truck and he shoots the windows out the truck and he's just yelling about killing her. He's like, if you come back, I'll blow your head off. And I was like, he's very passionate about this death. Drake ends up escaping. She limps away and we can still hear Harris yelling in the background. Keep running. I don't ever want to see your face ever again, ever. And the neighbors start to come out, the white neighbors, mind you. And she's like, help, he's trying to kill me. And the scene just fades to black. So that's how we wrap the episode. So, let's get into the meat of this. So I'll go to you, Jamie.
I mean, going back to what I was saying about him being abusive, like this is it. This is where we get, the layers have already been exposed and peeled and the onion is stinking at this point because Harris really is an abusive kind of guy. Like, it's one thing pointing a weapon at someone who is pointing a weapon at your wife because you're in defense of her, but she was unarmed at this point. Like, what are you doing shooting at her? What is wrong with you? And the fact that you're just shooting these stray bullets that could, hit some innocent bystander. So something is not quite right with Harris is what I'm trying to say. And it speaks to what Marissa may have been going through during this whole time with, her relationship with her dad. Like, maybe he is the reason why she went into this mental breakdown throughout all of her life. So it was a really intense scene. And man, it was just like, what kind of guy are you to just like start shooting at someone? And again, I'm not defending Dre's actions because Dre was very much the threat and the perpetrator here. But at this point, when someone's unarmed, they're, not a threat to you anymore, and you're pointing your weapon at them and shooting at them, then you got to look at yourself and go, what's going on? What am I doing? Look at yourself in the mirror. So yeah, it was something else. But yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, super intense. Ryan?
Yeah, I hope the scene with Patricia and Harris and Dre, I hope that's one of the Emmy scenes too that they showed, because I thought that was so well played by all of them. And he's telling Patricia to leave. I'm like, well, she got a gun too. She seemed like she ready in the back. I don't know what she told her to leave for. And then what's up with dude's aim? I was like, Harris, what you doing, bro? Because she was only like a little bit, and she shot she shot like the fruit bowl or whatever. And I was like, yeah, you really about to shoot her then, because you done missed a couple times here, bro. So I don't know if maybe you ain't really aiming. I don't know. But yeah, she got going. But when she made it to the attic, I was like, okay, now we back into that weird sort of shrine. And I was like, did she ever get locked in the attic at some point or something? I don't know. I just thought that whole scene could have been hinting to some more of like probably how they always, kind of treat her as like an outsider of this family. So and the signature of buzzing and stuff. I was like, okay, what we getting at here? What did they, what's really going down with Harris here in this scene? So yeah, he was scary. I was like, for him to go after when she had no gun, and for him to go after her like this. And look, like we keep on saying, you can't. It's hard to defend Dre, like in a court, girl going to prison.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to defend her because there's so many like things behind her, but. That was crazy for him to play this role like that, where you're like, she had no gun. She's like trying to lock doors, open up dressers and stuff, like open up the drawers just so she can get away. And then finally hops out of the window and he's still shooting. Aim, you're not hitting nothing, but still shooting. So it's just, it's insane to think about. And then for Patricia and Harris, this point to me that they didn't think about, okay, what did you do when Marissa was not there? Like Marissa chose Dre. Whether you want to ignore it or not, she chose Dre to go live with and go be off with. So what were you doing? So, it's taking your anger out, like trying to deflect so you don't have to think about all that you did. So it was interesting how they try to lay all that on her. So, yeah, I'm wondering if that, how that comes back or how that'll come back up as the seasons go. But yeah, this I was not expecting this ending to the scene, but yeah, it was definitely intense. And shout out, I love the Erykah Badu song they had at the end. I was like, that was so perfectly timed. I thought that was a good note to add in. But yeah, well done by everybody. Yeah, this episode gave some good backstory.
Yeah, agreed. Samuel?
Yeah, this was the scene that I watched over and over and over again because I just really wanted to kind of get Leon's story, like what he was really trying to say to Dre as he was about to execute her, basically. But the thing that was fascinating about it was when they transitioned from Patricia and him leaving with her going to the kitchen, I was like, where did he get that drink from? If you listen and we watch it, Patricia poured him the drink and he picked it up. And so she poured him a drink while they were about to do this. And I was like, yo, she not only is she still composed and got a gun, she pouring her man a drink while he about to execute this girl. But the sad reality of all this, while he's talking about us and talking about restitution and whatnot, he's still not taking ownership of his actions. Like he's using her as a scapegoat. Like, because the truth of the matter is, yeah, if somebody comes into your house right now, right, and you have them at gunpoint, yeah, you can call the police, but you have full right to execute them. But this is their adopted child. Like, regardless of what she's done, like they're treating her like she is a complete stranger. And they're doing it with prejudice. And it's kind of like when you get to that rationale, like fundamentally and mentally, these people are all off. And like you said, I don't know whether or not he was aiming at her, because the truth of the matter is, if you're using like a shotgun like that, like something would have hit her. Like some once those spread, eventually it'll like start to shred away with a person like that close to range. So I don't know if that was an intentional thing by Donald and them, or if it was her like being like ran out of the house. Like I really don't know, like, whether it was a part of him that just wanted her out, or if whether or not he was just shooting with the intent to kill. He didn't even care. Like I don't know. He is mentally as off as Dre is in my perception, just because of this scene. And I think that Leon did such a great job in this. Like he destroyed this scene. He ate this up in ways that I was like, man, like up until this point, Dre's been the most terrifying individual in this. And now it's like, okay, this is her dad. Regardless of how it happened, why it happened, but you understand levels of her because of him. And I thought that this was a great one. And the other thing was the last line when I rewatched it again, and she said, I think she hated you, something to that nature. I think she said that twice, as he was always trashing her when she was saying like, please help me. But the last thing she said, I think she hated you. And I thought that was very fascinating, because I get it. I really get where Marissa kind of came from, as much as where Dre had to suffer through. But I do wonder more about Dre's past, because I didn't know up until this point. I was kind of like, did Dre possibly have a hand at the death of Harris Jr.? They still didn't say that, but it kind of alluded that, that happened before, Dre came to the family. But it was kind of like, when did Dre get blood on her hands? Was it with her family before this? So it leaves more questions to Dre as well, even though we got a lot from her living with the Jacksons. But yeah.
Yep. Josh.
Woo-wee. Yeah, this whole thing was wild. Yeah, I think everyone touched on, I think, all the stuff. I mean, the Patricia is just gangster. He's like, yeah, please leave the room while I execute our former foster child. She's like, bet. Say less. I was like, who does that? What are we doing here? So that was interesting. But again, like you said, like I like connecting him to like a villain's monologue, because even when he goes through the whole thing, but even when he says like taking that money was the worst decision of my life, I'm like, there's an extra knife in that, because he could have said adopting you was the worst decision I ever made. But he didn't even say that. He's like taking that money. I'm like, yo, stripping her the last little bit of humanity. He just took that away from her. And again, you know, they're playing with that line of like, okay, we, at least in the Black community, we always say like, you can do what you want out there. You can do what you want to me. But if you mess with anyone in my family, I'm not responsible for what happens. And I feel like he was that personified, that you mess with my family, I'm not responsible for what happens. But again, he's not taking the ownership, because the other part that I'm thinking about is everyone's talking was like, you know what? Like you said, like he's blaming everyone. He blames her. He's not taking his own ownership of his own self. But also, Clarissa had a whole other life with other people in it. Like she had a job that she didn't want to be a part of. She had a manager she didn't like. She had a questionable boyfriend. Like she had stuff and other people that were driving her to, you know, decisions that she ultimately made. And we also know that, obviously we didn't know that completely in the beginning, but you know, it comes out afterwards that Khalid was like not on the up and up. So it's just like, there's a lot of other people that you could point to leading to that have a hand in Marissa's death, but you're not. Like, you are painting all of this on Dre, which, as has been said, you know, it's like this is probably how she grew up, and so she only knows love through the lens of obsession. Is like either you love someone all the way and you will do anything and everything, or you don't love them at all, which is ironic because she gets that from her dad. Either it's all the way and you'll do whatever, or nothing at all. But yeah, this whole scene was crazy to me. I was like, yo, this is wild. When she gets up to the room and she's hitting herself, I can't remember. I was trying to picture the scene. I can't remember what it was from. It might have actually been Game of Thrones, but just that whole idea of like hitting. Oh, actually, I'm so embarrassed because I don't even like this movie. At the end of The Force Awakens, so I'm not a fan of any Disney Star Wars, but at the end of The Force Awakens, when Kylo is, you know, he's fighting Finn and he does get hit, to bring himself back, he hits himself to kind of like, I gotta steal up, which I've never made a Kylo Ren reference in my life, so I apologize. I'm not responsible for where my brain goes, but just that whole idea of like, he used to like stop trying to survive comfortably. Like, we have to get back into that mode of I'll do anything, including jump off the roof. So yeah, that was nuts. And then I thought it was obviously it was sad, but I thought it was hilarious when he's shooting and him blowing out like the car windows made sense to me because like the further the range of a shotgun, like the less accurate. But he's shooting, screaming death threats for the whole neighborhood to hear. And white people like, damn. What was going on over there? Anyways, we're having a house party because there was a gathering. Like someone was having a house party. People were showing up for an event just around the corner, and they did not care. I was like, see, add this to my list of reasons why I'm not moving to Texas. But yeah, no, this I wasn't expecting it to end on this note. Again, I think I also agree that Leon, like, we always say that actors can only go as far as the material that they're given, and we usually say that when it's like they were given poor material but they did their best with it. But in this case, I feel like it was a perfect marriage because the material was just phenomenal and Leon just did it. He did it. That whole, I feel like this whole episode could be in the Emmy montage. Honestly, there's so many moments, but even that villain monologue, like it's the Cole part of it. Another Star Wars reference, one I am proud of, but it's like in Revenge of the Sith at the end of it, Anakin like chokes Padme and then lets her go. That speech
You're
to
breaking
me,
my heart, Anakin. I'm sorry, I had to say that. Anakin, you're breaking my heart. All right, go ahead.
Yeah.
Anytime you bring up, I just that line always gets to me. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, Josh.
I can't
Go
go
back.
down this road with you any longer. But yeah, that's like Vader saying, I wish I would have kept choking your mom so that you were never born. Like it was that level of just like cold-heartedness. I was like, this is nuts. This is nuts. Good catch, Sam. I did not pick up that she had poured him the drink, because I also was wondering. I was like, where did the drink come from? That just magically appeared. Like if that's what black magic really is, then I need that. But I was
Black
like,
love.
right. Just like, here, baby, I know you're about to sip this before you blow your brains out. Well, okay.
Black magic.
This was outstanding, and I feel like they, again, I think Ryan said at the beginning, there wasn't quite as many bodies in this episode, but it's almost like the energy was still matched. It wasn't as many bodies, but it still felt like, oh snap, like this is a crazy world. And I legitimately don't know what's good. There was a moment I was like, what if he shoots her and she dies here?
Yeah.
What are the next few episodes gonna be? And I was like, that could really happen. And for me, I loved that I did not have a guarantee on myself that the protagonist was for sure going to get out. I'm like, this is good storytelling.
Yeah, I like that they kind of played up the horror element with Leon being the big bad in this episode. It kind of the chase scene reminded me a lot of the first Scream movie when Sydney was running, and she did the same thing with the doors and the drawers that if you open it they won't open, and then the whole jumping out the window and down to like the boat, like all that I felt like might have been inspired a bit by that chase scene in Scream. So I love those horror elements, and I loved the villain monologue. I loved it. Leon killed that. So I really enjoyed the episodes. Any final thoughts before we sign off for the night?
Did we mention the fact that the episode with Helen, aka Ellen, is actually inspired by a real episode of Ellen where she interviewed John Legend and talked about the biting of Beyonce's nose by Sanaa Lathan? Yeah, that was an actual episode of Ellen where she interviewed John Legend. So the actor that's in that role, he's supposed to be John Legend.
Was John Legend. Oh, I was racking my brain trying to figure out who is this guy supposed to be in the grand scheme of things. I couldn't find the reference, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's dope.
So, and I was thinking when she was hitting herself, it's so funny that you bring up Star Wars, Josh. I was thinking of the movie Fear with Mark Wahlberg. That scene
when he's
where
like,
he starts hitting his chest.
Yeah.
Because those have some strong parallels because he was a psycho and he was also a killer. So yeah, that's what I thought of immediately.
Yeah, I got a question. In this series, has there actually been any real personal reference, like an actual person that they've referenced in entertainment or in politics at all? Has there ever been anybody they've actually used their actual last name in this?
I don't think so.
Trump is mentioned.
So that's why I was bringing it up, because Trump was mentioned in this, and I was kind of thinking, I was like, there's not been any other individual's last name that they've made reference to people, but they haven't actually used somebody's name. So I was like, I think this is the first time in this episode that they actually used the person they used Trump for 2018. So that was interesting.
Yeah. Well, not much anyone could do about that one. But yeah,
I guess they have to be really
going
careful.
to jail anyway.
I know, right?
Okay.
One can hope. But I think they have to be very careful of who they name because of legal reasons. I think with Trump, him being the president during that year, that's different. And also they had like this sort of faux CNN news report talking about the current events of the day or whatever. So they could get away with that. But yeah, I think they have to be very, very careful, even though this is sort of drawing some very strong parallels to Beyonce's life. Because they haven't even dropped Jay-Z's name.
No.
No.
Cachet.
Right.
Cachet, yeah. I mean, they haven't dropped Beyonce's name. They haven't dropped any people around her circle in this series. But we know that, she gave her blessing. So
Yeah. Oh, Jesse Williams. They did bring up they didn't say his last name, but he was like, "I'm Jesse, and I'm on Grey's Anatomy." And it was
Right.
They did.
great
They did use
value.
his first name. That's right.
that's right.
Yeah. Well, the next episode that we'll touch on next week actually is real life accounts entitled "Falling Through the Cracks." So we kind of get to discuss what's real and what's not next week. So yeah.
There we go.
There we go. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to episode 5 recap of Swarm. We will see you next week, same time, same place. And thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate the engagement.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye.